Welcome to the Violoncello da Spalla Master Course, the Sound Alchemist edition. I'm Dmitry, I'm the author of the book on da Spalla and Violoncello da Spalla luthier. And I've been doing this for more than 20 years now. Now let me tell you a few words about who this course is for and what is the objective of this very unusual course. This course is designed for violin and viola players who have already discovered the violoncello da Spalla. They are interested, maybe even curious, to learn more about this instrument. Maybe they even want to play this instrument, but they do not have the violoncello da Spalla and they do not know how to even begin. So this course is primarily designed for violin and viola players who would love to get more familiar, who would love to get a step closer to this remarkable instrument, even though they do not have the instrument yet. Now, this course is also for those who already have violoncello da Spalla, and they will still learn a lot of new things in this course. However, if you already have violoncello da Spalla, probably you do not need a practical course because you already have 90% of the technique you will ever need to play this instrument. Therefore, this course is primarily for violin and viola players who do not have the instrument but would like to get a step closer. And in this lesson, you are going to actually try violoncello da Spalla technique on your violin or viola, so you can get a very clear idea about what it feels like holding and playing this instrument. With that said, let me reveal something crucially important. It is not about an instrument. It is not about the violoncello da Spalla. It has never been about a piece of wood we call today violoncello da Spalla. So if it is not about the instrument, then what is it all about? About music, you might say. And I would agree, yes, music is important, but music is not the most important thing. Come to think about this from a slightly different angle, from the angle of people like us, sound alchemists. You see, many musicians claim that music in itself is the language, music is self-sufficient, music is the goal, but sound alchemists think about music a little bit like medicine. Medicine is important, yes, but medicine is not the goal. The purpose of medicine is to heal a person from an ailment. And the purpose of music is the same. The purpose of music is not music itself, but to inspire yourself and maybe your audiences, maybe your colleagues, to do something, to dare to do something that they always dreamt to do but never dare to begin out of fear of criticism or trolls out there. Imagine how many thousands, maybe even millions of people are right now in that situation, and they just need someone like you, a sound alchemist, to transform their self-doubt and fear into creativity, into action, to inspire them to do that beautiful thing they always wanted to do but doubted themselves whether they have what it takes to do it. Are you beginning to see how it is not about the instrument, how it is not even just about music, but about the purpose of music? We are sound alchemists. We are a little bit like the alchemists of the Middle Age who tried to transform lead into gold. We are doing similar work. We are transforming that fear, that self-doubt into believing that our audiences can do that thing they always wanted to do. What it is, it's up to them to decide. Maybe some of your audiences will finally feel inspired to begin playing musical instruments, maybe listen to even more music, maybe coming to even more concerts and discovering more musicians and more repertoire. Maybe you will inspire them to do that beautiful, important thing they have always dreamt of doing but never dared to do, whatever that is. Becoming better persons in some way. Now remember, the purpose of this transformational course is to familiarize yourself with these maybe unusual concepts, maybe different ways of thinking, but give you the transformation. You see, once you begin playing this instrument, you are beginning to represent different values. You are beginning to be seen as an ambassador to a cultural tradition, the whole mindset, whole culture being born and revived and brought to life, to your concert hall, to the lives of these families, of all those people who are there to listen your amazing music. So this is about transformation from just a great musician you are already today into a sound alchemist, a musician on this noble mission. Now, with that said, let me give you some historical insight into the instrument before we dive into the practical demonstration and actually doing the exercise together, because this is an action-focused master course. So, the historical background. Violoncello was born in the early 17th century in Italy. The need for the violoncello was born out of the need to have a stringed bass instrument that would be able to perform solo parts, like there was already violin to perform and a viola part to perform alto or soprano parts. Now they wanted to have an instrument that could play solo bass parts. Therefore they invented violoncello, or small bass, small violone. And in the early 17th century, violoncello was made in a huge variety of sizes, something that is very difficult for us with our square mindset to even comprehend, because today we have everything standardized. Cello in New Zealand and Iceland is exactly the same instrument, tuned in exactly the same pitch, but in the 17th century it was not the case. So the violoncello too, like violins and violas, were made in a huge variety of sizes, and there were smaller instruments and there were bigger instruments. In the second half of the 17th century, in Italy, probably in the region of Bologna, the metal wound strings were invented, and this was a revolution. All of a sudden, luthiers were capable to build even greater variety of the same type of instruments. Instruments became smaller, more manageable. And this is when the smaller violoncelli da Spalla or da Gamba were born. This revolution with the strings, by the way, gave birth not just to a number of new musical instruments, it even gave birth to genres in music that did not exist before. For example, the instrumental concerto, where violins or celli could now play obbligato and solo parts. Unthinkable before, but now, from the second half of the 17th century, it finally became possible and rather popular. Of course, violoncello was a very novel instrument, and there were lots of naysayers even in the 17th century, so the acceptation of violoncello was a very hard battle for lots of early cellists. So the repertoire for this instrument is indeed really very big. Now, with that said, now I gave you this brief historical overview of violoncello da Spalla. Let's dive into the practical part of this master course, of this lesson number 1 in the series of 7 lessons. So I assume you are a professional violin or viola player. You do not have violoncello da Spalla just yet, but you can use your violin or viola to get just one step closer to your becoming a sound alchemist and exploding your repertoire exponentially by now also being able to play not just violin or viola parts, but also basso continuo, obbligato and solo parts written originally for violoncello, or arrange an enormous amount of music for this instrument, because violoncello da Spalla can have 5 strings with the E string an octave lower than the violin. That means that you could also play a lot of soprano repertoire. Soprano, by soprano I mean higher pitched instruments, be it wind instruments or violins. You could play this repertoire. You could also arrange a lot of vocal music. So the repertoire for this instrument is really huge, and somewhere on my website you might find in the articles section a list of more than 2,000 works, which means there is enough repertoire for the next 25 years for you to play and record, potentially for the first time ever in history. But again, remember, it is not just about the instrument, not just about the repertoire, it's about the bigger purpose of all this thing we call music, and violoncello da Spalla just happens to be a part of this. Now let's dive into the practical part. Grab your violin. It doesn't matter if you have a beautiful modern violin or a beautiful Baroque violin. Grab a violin and find a rope of some kind. I'm going to use my violoncello da Spalla belt just because I have it, but I guess you don't have a violoncello da Spalla belt, which is not a problem. Find a string, a rope, a belt of some kind, about 1 meter, 20 centimeters long, maybe a little bit longer. And then what you need to do is tie knots at both ends of that rope or belt. And the next thing, here's what you need to do. Tuck one of the ends of your belt under the fingerboard of your violin, just like this. Then pass the belt around your back and tuck the other end of the belt under the chin rest or under the tailpiece, and adjust the length of the belt so that the instrument is sitting not too low and not too high, just beneath the chin, so that if you want to support the instrument with the chin, you can do so very easily. Now this belt is obviously a little bit long, and I'm going to make it a little bit shorter by simply reattaching the knot. Now let's give it a try. And now the instrument is sitting in a much better position. So when you hold your violin like this against the right shoulder, just beneath your chin, you are already a step closer to familiarizing yourself with the violoncello da Spalla technique and discovering the truth. You already have 90% of all the technique you will ever need on this instrument, on the violoncello da Spalla, which is why it is absolutely not a hyperbole, it's not an exaggeration. You can begin playing this instrument professionally in a matter of days, maybe weeks. And when you hold the instrument against your right shoulder, you will notice that you feel very uncomfortable because the violin is very tiny and your hands come closer, you feel smaller. When you hold violoncello da Spalla or even the viola, you feel very much more natural. But this is the playing posture. It is very much more natural than playing the violin or the viola, because your hands are in your most natural position. This is how you communicate most passionately, most eloquently in front of your audiences. You do not speak to your audiences holding your hands on the side. This is your playing posture. Now let's assume you do not have a violin because you are maybe a viola player. Grab your viola. It doesn't matter if your viola is a modern instrument or a Baroque instrument. We are going to do exactly the same thing. Tuck the belt under the fingerboard, pass the belt around your back, and in a moment I will show you something very important. Then tuck the other end of the belt under the chin rest or under the tailpiece if you play the Baroque viola. Obviously you do not have a chin rest. So attach it somewhere there, and now you're holding the violoncello, your viola in the violoncello da Spalla posture. You're ready to actually give it a try. Now if you have both violin and viola, you have probably immediately noticed that it is so much more natural to hold the viola in this posture. Why? Because the viola is very much bigger than the violin. So you feel more normal, more natural. And when you hold the violoncello da Spalla, which I'm going to do in a moment to demonstrate my point, this feels even more natural. Now, you can, by the way, pause this video. I should have said that earlier. Find a rope or a belt, attach it, and then play and watch that video again. Let me show you how the belt is going around your back rather than your neck. This is very important. Do not put the belt on your neck, but put the belt around your back, because this releases all strain from your neck. And now grab a bow and simply try to play a few notes, and you will see that you actually can play. Maybe your playing will be slightly out of tune, maybe you might have to practice 5, 10, maybe minutes, maybe half an hour to start playing in tune, but you will very quickly discover that you actually have all the technique already you need to play the violoncello da Spalla. There you go. I'm a luthier, you are a violist, you can play it in tune probably very much sooner than I can. Still, it feels small and tiny because it is just not big enough. But let me grab the violoncello da Spalla, the real one, now, and just show you what I call the liberation paradox. So what is liberation paradox? A lot of violin and viola players who have never even seen the violoncello da Spalla, but have a lot of opinion about violoncello da Spalla, they believe that the instrument is so awkward, so big, so heavy, so bulky, it must break your neck, must break your back, but the truth is 180 degrees opposite to this common belief. Let me illustrate my point. We are going to grab one of my latest violoncellos da Spalla, and we are going to do the same thing. Now you don't have the violoncello da Spalla, maybe yet you can still do the same thing with your violin or your viola. We are going to attach the other end of the belt under the tailpiece. And now, because this is a violoncello da Spalla, I'm going to do something slightly different, but this is important. Instead of passing the belt around my back, I'm going to wear the instrument, as it were, this way. And the advantage of doing this is that now the belt is not sitting on your left arm, but the belt is going under, and your left arm is free to move. Now again, the same thing. The belt is a little bit too short. Now I adjusted it, it is longer, now it is comfortable to hold. It is the same. Now you can feel, because the instrument is very much larger, your posture is very much more natural. And your hands, although the instrument is much bigger, your hands are still not outstretched anywhere as far as we would normally do, even on the violin. Are you beginning to see what do I mean by the liberation paradox? The instrument is large, the instrument is heavier, but it feels incomparably lighter than the violin or the viola because there is no weight of the instrument to support with your arms. And even when you play the instrument, you are not going to use all those muscles of your back, which you do need to use when you're playing the viola. You are not going to use any muscles of your neck, which you need to use when you are holding your violin or the viola with the chin. Baroque violin or viola players maybe do not need to do this, so they are a little bit familiar with this freedom technique, as it were, but with the violoncello da Spalla, this is what we call the liberation paradox. Are you beginning to see how it is all very different? And again, remember the point. It is about transformation. It is about becoming a sound alchemist. It is about a mission. It is not about an instrument. It is not even about reviving this ocean of musical repertoire that you could perform on this instrument in a matter of days. It is about something greater. It is about the very purpose of music. And with the violoncello da Spalla, you're just making it a little bit more obvious and a little bit easier to understand, even for people without PhD in classical music or maybe without a lot of experience of going to classical music concerts. And when you begin doing this, you are beginning to tell a very different story other musicians simply can't. Are you beginning to see how this is all about transforming you from just a phenomenal string player into a sound alchemist, a musician on this very special and very elevated mission? Now, the fun part, your homework. So your homework for this video will be finding a string or a rope. Let me show you this one more time. So what you have to do is find a belt, a rope, a string of some kind, not too thick, not too thin, tie a knot at both ends, and then try to experiment with your violin or viola until you feel fluid, until you feel familiar with this posture, with this technique. And this is how you're getting one step closer to becoming an ambassador of Violoncello da Spalla. So go ahead, experiment with this, and with that said, we are going to proceed to the next lesson. And in the next lesson, I'm going to speak about how all this works in more detail and how do you really connect the body with the instrument. So this is an even more practical lesson. So do the homework for this lesson and go straight to the next one. See you there.